China has slashed the quarantine time for inbound travelers to 7 days, with a further 3 spent at home. Now, that's a drastic drop from the previous combined 21 days of quarantine and home monitoring. It is the country's biggest relaxation of curbs after sticking to a rigid zero-COVID policy so far that has battered Asia's #1 economy and frustrated millions of Chinese citizens caught in months-long lockdowns. Now, China has been cautiously easing curbs on cross-border travellers in recent months. Back in April, it piloted reduced quarantine requirements in 8 major cities, including Shanghai and Guangzhou. The move comes as Beijing and Shanghai report no new local infections, the first time both cities are in the clear at the same time since late February. Daily infections have dropped to single digits over the past week, with dining in at restaurants in Shanghai gradually resuming and Beijing reopening some leisure venues. Riding on the coattails of the relaxed guidelines, Shanghai Disneyland will be reopening its doors on Thursday, about 4 weeks after the city lifted its 2-month lockdown. Olivia Seong joins us live from Beijing with more. Ollie, what's the rationale the government's giving to cutting the quarantine duration?
Well, the main reason that authorities are citing is the nature of the Omicron variant that's spreading in China. They are saying that because the incubation period of the virus, of this variant, is shorter, this therefore allows for shorter quarantine times. Now, authorities also said during the announcement that it has a huge amount of evidence from its pilot schemes and that there are lessons that have been learned from the outbreaks that were seen in Jilin as well as in Shanghai as well. But officials are very keen to stress that this is not a shift from its zero-COVID policy. In fact, saying that it is meant to improve its control measures under this scheme, and it's by no means a loosening of these control measures, but that the goal is really to take a more scientific, targeted approach. The messaging here is important, especially politically, as we've seen Chinese President Xi Jinping himself say that China must hold on to its zero-COVID policy. This ahead of a key Communist Party Congress that's to take place later in the year. So the success of zero-COVID here in China, very important for the party. The announcement also being made as we've seen an improvement in the COVID situation, particularly in Beijing and Shanghai, both reporting no new local infections today.
And as these moves to relaxation were announced, how were they greeted on the ground?
Well, overall, you could say that this is being welcomed by international travelers, but there is still some caution as well. This is definitely seen as a big step and good news for those hoping to come into China, as getting into the country from overseas has truly been challenging. Foreign businesses also saying that it's been difficult to attract overseas talent given these tough requirements. And so this has been welcomed by foreign business chambers here in China as well. One of the big factors really is the lengthy quarantine requirement, at least 14 days if you're entering China in a centralized quarantine facility. This is typically a government-designated hotel that you get assigned to. This sometimes stretches to 21 days depending on the city that you're entering from and where you are headed to, as well as your home living arrangements as well. So definitely cutting this to 7 days is a big step. Also, the following 7 days that's to be spent at home for 3 days rather, that's being cut from 7 days for the home health monitoring is being welcome. The signs were there. However, there are still some challenges, as we know that flights into China have been limited since the pandemic started. Also, international flights are very prone to changes and cancellation. But we have heard from aviation authorities last week that they are speaking and negotiating with countries to up the number of flights into China in the second half of the year. So so that perhaps being a positive sign. Also, we need to point out that these shortened quarantine requirements also apply domestically among those who are close contacts of those who test positive for COVID-19. However, netizens are saying that it all boils down to the implementation. Many concerned that local authorities may take things into their own hands and add their own quarantine requirements. So a lot of wait and see here on the ground.
Olivia Seong with those developments from Beijing. Thank you.